Hello Big Two, hello friends, welcome to Lizzie Faye Loves Books. I'm Elizabeth, and this is part 3 of my May TBR and part 2 of all the middle grade series I still want to read this year, and it's kind of an update on my 20 by 20 challenge. I'm in the 3rd year of that challenge. I started in 2018 with 20 different stacks of books, or 20 different categories or lists of books that I wanted to read from over the 3-year period, and so my goal is to get as many of these read by the end of this year, 2020. And so I did a video already about my stack 19, which is 19 series that are completed, as far as I know, that I had started prior to 2018 that I wanted to try and finish or at least make some progress in. So some of the series were YA, and I'm not really talking about those today, but the majority on that list of 19 were middle grade books. So I didn't talk about 19 series because I already finished some of them, and like I said, some of them were YA. So I'll link that video below if you missed it, but in this video I'm talking about stack 17, which is a list of 17 series that are not completed or were not completed by the time I started this challenge, but about half of them are middle grade and the other half are adult books. So I am just talking about the middle grade books today, and I want to show you the series that I'm reading. Now some of these series may be completed by this point, I'm not even sure, but at the time that I made this list I don't think they were completed, and most of them probably are still ongoing. So let's just talk about the series, and then if we have time at the end I will also mention the rest of my potential middle grade May TBR, because I did look at my middle grade bookshelf and pulled out a few shorter books or books that I'm interested in, or books that I said, why have I not read this already? Pulled them out just as possibilities for mood reading, or if I can get to them or whatever. But first let's do the books that are part of series that are on my list. Now there are 9 middle grade series on my list, and so far during this 3-year period from 2018 to the present I have read from 4 of those series. So I may or may not try to read any more of each of those series this year. A couple of them I do plan to. One of those is the Diary of a Wimpy Kid series by Jeff Kinney. I think I've read one book each year since I got started with this series. These are my daughter Katie's books. Even though she's in high school, I still buy them for her, although I don't think I've bought the most recent one. It's a series that she has really enjoyed reading, you know, all through elementary school and middle school. And I said, you know, that's such a fun series. You might want to just hang on to those someday. Maybe when you're a booktuber, you can show these books as some of your early childhood reading, and you might even want to share them with your own kids. So I continue to add to her set. But this is the one I'm up to. It's book 8 called Hard Luck. Another series that's on the list that I've made really good progress in is the 39 Clues series by various authors. I finished the original 39 Clues series, and then last year in 2019 I listened to the 6 books in the second series, which is a spin-off series called Cahill's vs. Vespers. Now I'm interested in reading the Unstoppable series, which is another spin-off series of the 39 Clues. I only have the physical copy of book 4, Flashpoint, but all 4 of the books from this spin-off series are on audio on Hoopla, so I want to at least get started with it this month and then go ahead and possibly finish this whole spin-off series this year. Another series I've got on the list is by Sheila Turnage. This series is the Mo and Dale Mysteries, and I read the first one back when it was a Sunshine State book a few years ago. It's called 3 Times Lucky. This is a story about a girl named Mo who does not know who her birth parents were, but she is being raised by a family that found her in a basket floating down a river. So that's why she has the name Moses, or Mo. And her friend Dale solve mysteries. The biggest mystery she's trying to solve is who her birth mother is. And I have only read this book and the second book, Ghosts of Tupelo Landing, and still we don't know who Moe's birth mother is. We may not ever find out. She may not ever find out, but this series is really, really wonderful. So this second book is on Hoopla on audio, and I searched again to see if perhaps the third book was on audio on Hoopla, and it was not. And I thought, wow, it's too bad I don't have the third book on my shelves, because it's so good I would just read it. So the other day I was pulling out books for this video, and almost all my shelves are double stacked, and these two books happen to be in the back stack where I couldn't see them. So when I pulled off the first layer of books, there it was. I didn't even remember that I had it. The book is The Odds of Getting Even, book 3 in the Moedale Mysteries, and if I can get to it this month, I will. It's such a fun series, and I'm super excited that I have all 3 of these. I think there may be a 4th book out now, and if there is, I will get it too next time I go to a Scholastic Warehouse sale. Next year, if you are planning to participate in middle grade March and March Mystery Madness, any book from this series would definitely fit the bill. Alright, I mentioned that there were 4 that I'd already read from. The 4th one is the Theodore Boone series by John Grisham. I only have the first one on my shelf, and I read books 3 and 4 of this series last year, so I'm probably not going to make that series a priority anymore this year. But I think there are more books in the series, and it's a great series. I definitely will pick it back up at some point. But moving on down the list, I have the Charlie Joe Jackson series by Tommy Greenwald. I have the first book on my shelf, which I've read, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to get the second book. If I can get it from the library anytime soon, I might go ahead and get it. Definitely sometime this year, I'd like to read it. I'm not even sure how many more books there are in this series, but this first book was so much fun. This book is exactly what the title says. It's about a boy who is doing everything he can to get out of reading, and it really is a fun book, and I anticipate that the rest of the series will be just as fun. I'll put up a picture of the second book and maybe even the third book, and I don't own them, but I do want to read them at some point, hopefully this year. The next series is one that I was about to think I was never going to get to, because Katie wanted me to read this when she was reading this series in elementary school, and I could never seem to get around to getting the first book read. I think I started it 2 or 3 times before I finally got through it. The series is the Warrior series by Erin Hunter, and I finally did get the first book read, and I enjoyed it even more than I thought I would. The first book was called Into the Wild, and Katie owns the whole series. She has just about every book of all the spin-off series and everything, and she was tempted to put it in the yard sale, and if she really wants to get rid of them, I of course will not object. But this is kind of like the Wimpy Kid series. Between the Wimpy Kid series and the Warrior series, these were kind of like her big series during elementary and middle school. So I kind of encouraged her to hang on to them, especially for now, because I kind of like to go ahead and read more of them. And I'm happy to say that Hoopla now has a lot of them on audio. So I am planning to pick up book 2, which is Fire and Ice. I may even already have it checked out. And then if I can get to it, I might go ahead and listen to book 3, Forest of Secrets. Even if I don't read the entire Warriors Kingdom series, this first series has 6 books, and I would like to go ahead and at least read this whole first 6-book series. And now that's even more possible by the fact that they're on Hoopla on audio. So I was wrong. There are 5 series on the list that I have read from during this 3-year period. The next one is Mr. Lemoncello's Library. I read the first one for middle grade May probably 4 years ago, and then in 2018 I got a hold of an audio copy of the second book, and I listened to it. So it's not going to be a priority to read this year, because I have read at least one of them during this 20 by 20 challenge. But again, it's a great series, and it is one that I want to pick back up with at some point. I first heard about this series from my friend Elizabeth Tyree, who is also a participant in middle grade May, and she's my partner in Book a Day in May. We've been doing a Book a Day in May for a few years now, as well as participating with the T.O.A.S.T in middle grade May. So Elizabeth, thank you. If you're watching this, thank you for introducing me to Mr. Lemoncello's Library. It's by Grabenstein, and it's a really great series. And speaking of Elizabeth Tyree, I am currently reading one of her books right now. It's called Dragon on My Neck. There are 3 stories in this Dragon series, and I've had them in my Kindle library for at least a year, and I needed to read one. So I'm reading one right now for middle grade May. The next series on the list has to do with Disney. It's the Disney Descendants series. I found this first book at a big box store when it first came out for like $11, and I grabbed it. I've read this first one, and I've been on the lookout for a copy of the second book, and I don't own it. But then last year, after one of Katie's color guard competitions, I was at a used bookstore, and I found book 3 for a really good price. It is Rise of the Isle of the Lost. So I went ahead and grabbed it. I noticed that these books are on ebook, I think, on Hoopla. So I've already read book 1. If I can get to it, I want to try to read book 2 on ebook and then eventually get to book 3. I think there's more than that in the series at this point, and they're not really high priority on my list. Then I think of them as more YA books, but they're certainly appropriate for middle grade, and it is a series that I definitely want to continue with. And then the last one also might be considered more YA than middle grade, but I'm going to include it anyway. It's book 3 in the Trials of Apollo by Riordan. I have listened to the first 2 books in this series on audio, and if I can get a hold of the audio of this one, I will. But meanwhile, I've got the print copy. I doubt I'll get to it in May because of everything else that I have, but it's on my list of series that I definitely want to finish. Okay, so a few other books that I'm hoping to get to during the month of May. Book I was excited to find on Hoopla Audio is the 3rd book in the Framed series by James Ponti. Now, I still maintain that the name of this series should have stayed Toast, because the theme of this series is that the sleuths do their detecting based on the theory of all small things, which is T.O.A.S.T. The first book, Framed, which is this one, was a Sunshine State book a few years ago. I really enjoyed it. I have read the second book, which is called Vanished. This is a really good series for March Mystery Madness and middle grade March. They're fantastic middle grade mysteries, and I don't own a copy of the second book or the third one, but the third book is called Trapped, and it is on Hoopla Audio. So I am planning to listen to that this month, and I'm looking forward to it. Another series that I'm really interested in reading, I have listened to this first book on Hoopla Audio. It's the Mother-Daughter Book Club series by Heather Vogel Frederick. It's not a super high priority this year because it's not on my 20 by 20 challenge, but it's mainly not on there because I didn't know about it until after I had already started my 20 by 20 challenge. But I think almost all of the books are on audio on Hoopla, and the second book I'm very interested in because it is called Much Ado About Anne. So I'm assuming they're going to be reading Anne of Green Gables for the Mother-Daughter Book Club, and that's one of my favorite books of all time. So I am excited to get to that. I do have it checked out from Hoopla, and I probably won't go any farther in the series until next year, but it is definitely a series that I want to continue with. So if you recall back to early in the year, I said that this year was going to kind of be the year of one a month. I have a list of several different series and categories, and if I could just read one a month from each of those lists, then I would go a long way towards accomplishing my reading goals for the year. So I'm giving myself an out on all of the ones that are absolutely not middle grade, but for as many of the lists that are middle grade books or could be a middle grade book, I am trying to accomplish those lists. So the only 2 exceptions for that are my book club books. I have a book club for our regular library book club and also our mystery book club at the library. And even though the library is not open, our book clubs have been able to meet outside in a pavilion area, and so I have continued to keep up with my book club reading. So those aside, because I've already talked about those in other videos, the middle grade books that I can read to accomplish my different lists are what I want to show you next. One of the lists is the Series of Unfortunate Events, and I am up to book 6, which is the Ersatz Elevator. I don't know what this is going to be about. I guess it's going to be about an elevator. I had to look up what Ersatz meant, and now I've already forgotten, but I'll look it up again before I get started with this book. Anyway, I have been able to keep up with this list this year, and I have read one each month. I went into the year having only read the first book, so because there's 13, If I read one a month, I will finish the series by the end of the year. One of the other goals is to read a Newbery winner every month. And for this month, I want to read The Hero and the Crown by Robin McKinley. I don't think I've ever read this before, but I noticed that it is the second in a series, and both the first book and the second book are on Scribd, on audio. So I decided I would save this one for this month. Since I'm reading all middle grade books, I can go ahead and listen to the first book, which is called The Blue Sword, and then move right on into book 2. Then I'll decide if I want to read any more of the series. I think there's at least 3, maybe 4, and they're not a high priority. My main goal is to just read all Newbery winners, but if I want to finish the series, it'll be there when I'm ready to read it. Another series I would love to finish this month is the Kingdom Keeper series by Ridley Pearson. I've just got book 7 left to read. This is called The Insider. This is a chunker, so it's going to wrap up the series, but then there is a segue book called Syndrome that goes into the spin-off series. Those can wait till next year. This, I'm gonna consider the series done for this year if I can get this last one read. Whether it gets done this month or not, I don't know, but it is on audio on Scribd, and my library has it on CD. I will probably just go ahead and listen to it on Scribd so that I can speed it up a little bit. One of the other lists of books that I have is from my TBR jar, and I was going to skip that list this month, but I happened to look down in the actual bin of books, and I spotted a middle grade nonfiction book that is in my TBR jar. So rather than read one of the books that I've already drawn out this month, which are all adult books, I decided I would go ahead and read this one because it's on audio on Hoopla, and so I can listen to it. So this is Life in Motion, An Unlikely Ballerina by Misty Copeland. I have really been interested in her story. She was the first African-American ballerina to really hit the big time, and it just sounds really good. I have already started this. This will take care of one out of my TBR jar, and then someday when I ever pull this out of my TBR jar, I'll be like, I already read this, yay. I also have 3 middle grade audiobooks in my Audible library that I have not listened to. I think these were all Audible originals, so they were free to me in whatever month they were offered, and I will try to get to those if I can. One of them is called Sovereign by Jeff Hirsch. Another one is called The Spies That Bind by Allie Carter. This is a prequel to the Gallagher Girls series. I haven't read any of the Gallagher Girls, and I don't know if I ought to read the first few novels before I read this prequel, because sometimes prequels can give away things, you know, that you don't want to know from the beginning. So I don't know. If any of you have ever read Gallagher Girls, let me know. I have read the Embassy Row series by Allie Carter. It was a trilogy about a girl living at an embassy in a fictitious country because her grandfather was the ambassador, and that was good. So I'm interested in reading more books by her, but I don't know if I should start with this prequel novella or start with the first main novel. So I may not listen to that one this month. Another one I have on Audible is something called FOREVERYWHERE, and it looks really cute. It looks like a fantasy. It's got a unicorn and a rainbow on the front, so that one looks interesting. It's very short. And then I've just been searching around on all of the library resources just to see what I can find on audio of books that are already on my TBR and on my bookshelves. And so here are some of the ones that I have found that I might possibly listen to this month or soon. I showed this in a haul video not too long ago. This is 5 Little Peppers and How They Grew. I just heard Felicia from Little Prairie Library talk about reading this, and she said it was kind of just okay. So I'm interested in it. I found this old Whitman hardcover edition at a flea market not too long ago, and it looks cute. I did find it on audio somewhere where I could listen to it for free, so I may listen to this one this month. And then I also found an audio of Swiss Family Robinson. I've had this on my shelf for just a little over a year. One of the nurses gave me this for my birthday when Emily was in the hospital in 2018, and I had to spend my birthday there with her. I have 3 books that the nurses gave me, and this is one of them, so I want to get to this one and the other 2 at some point. This one is on my 20 by 20 challenge under the category of series to start. I have had this series on my shelves for several years now. I started collecting them at the Scholastic Warehouse sales. This is the first book in the Land of Stories called The Wishing Spell. It's by Chris Colfer, and I have been looking for it free on audio, and I think I finally found it. I can't remember where now. And I also noticed that on Scribd they have a couple of Sharon Creech books. I have had this on my shelf for a while, Chasing Redbird. I don't know anything about it, but I am definitely a Sharon Creech fan, and so I'm interested to read more of her books, especially the ones that I haven't read. But I also want to reread my favorite book by Sharon Creech. This is Ruby Holler. It's about two orphans who either escape or somehow manage to leave an orphanage and set off on their own. And it's been years since I read it, but as I recall, that's the premise. And I remember really loving it, even more than Walk Two Moons, which is a Newbery winner. So I noticed that this is on there, and I'm going to listen to this again. And I don't know if this one's on there, but this is one of her newer ones that I've never read, and it's on my shelf. It's The Great Unexpected. So if you've ever read this, let me know what you thought about it. Also on my shelf, I have Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians by Brandon Sanderson. I have not ever read any Brandon Sanderson, and I think this is the beginning of a series, and I recently noticed the audio of this, I think on RB Digital, so I'm excited to listen to it. I probably will eventually try to read the rest of the series, but for now, I'll be happy if I can just read this first one because it's the one that's on my shelf right now. A few other books that I have on my shelf that are shorter that I would read in print if I can get to them. I have not ever finished the Spiderwick Chronicles. I have read the first three, and at the time I read those, I didn't own books 4 and 5. I have since found them at library sales, so I do want to at least finish this first series. There is a spin-off series. I have the first one of those, but I'll be excited if I can just get these two read. And book 4 is called The Ironwood Tree, and book 5, The Wrath of Molgrath. And these are by Holly Black and Tony DiTierlizzi. I have one of a series, but I don't think it matters to read these out of order. This is by Kate DiCamillo. I had not heard of this series until I found this book at a book sale. The series is Mercy Watson. This one is called Princess in Disguise. This is really not a middle grade book. It's a children's book, and I mainly got it to put in the little free library downtown. But it looks so cute that I want to read it before I pass it on. Another book on my shelf that I got from Catherine, from Jane Catherine on Books. I had not heard of The Railway Children, and she sent me this nice large print copy all the way from the UK, and it's by Edith Nesbit, and so I need to read this. And another book that's about the same size but a little thicker that I've tried to read previously and I couldn't get to it, and so I'm going to make another attempt to get it read this month. And that is The Annotated Hobbit. Now, I've read The Hobbit, I've listened to it on audio, I've read it in print, and I have this annotated version that I really would like to read. So one of these days, if not this month, then soon, hopefully, I want to actually read this edition. And then also on my shelves, I have this whole trilogy, Legend by Marie Lu. This may be more YA than middle grade, but I'm pretty sure that the middle school library had this when Katie was in middle school, so I think it's fair game. And I discovered that all 3 of these are on RB Digital on audio, so yay, I can listen to them and get this series done. I'm pretty sure that if you like Hunger Games and Divergent and books like that, then you would like this one, and I will soon find out. And then another one that would kind of count towards my Newbery project, even though I'm already reading a Newbery winner this month. I picked this up recently, and I don't even think I have shown it in a book haul, but I noticed that it's a Newbery Honor book from the 90s, and it is by Christopher Paul Curtis, who wrote one of my favorite middle grade books, Bud Not Buddy. This one is called The Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963, and it looks like it's going to be really good, and I found it on audio on Overdrive, so I will be listening to this one this month as well. So that's about it for my middle grade and children's TBR for May and really for the rest of the year. There is one other set of middle grade books that I would like to at least get started on this year, but I don't know if I will or not, and that is the Sunshine State books for next school year. They have already been announced, and I only finally finished reading this school year's books at the beginning of April. I finished the last one, and I just a few days ago checked out from the library all the rest of the books that I didn't already have checked out. I was able to get them, and so that will be coming up before the end of the month. I'm going to do a wrap-up video of the 15 middle grade books on the Sunshine State list for the 2019-2020 school year. And so you can look forward to that if you're a fan of middle grade books. Also, I plan to do a video related to Newbery winners, and that will be coming up hopefully before the end of the month. For now, those are the middle grade books that I plan to read either this month or at some point this year. And if you didn't see the video previous to this, this is really kind of part 2 of my middle grade TBR for this month and this year. If you missed part 1, I will link it down below. And that's all for this video. I hope you're having a great day, read a good book, and God bless you.